Hello.
Hey, good morning, sir.
Good morning to you.
How's it going, man?
It's going really well. How about you?
Not awake enough yet to really know for sure, but
Yeah. I don't think I am either. I don't have an excuse though. It's 10 a.m. here, so but it's 10 a.m. Sunday. So.
That's true. I appreciate you agreeing to do this, man. I've been wanting to have you on the show for a while, so I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Yeah, I've been wanting. How long has the show been on?
Last May, maybe.
Last May. So you're coming up on a year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. I listened to every episode. So.
Oh, thanks, man.
No problem. All right. So where do you want to start with this thing?
Well, I'll introduce you. We'll probably do like a little overview. Ask you to. I mean, you've been listening to the show, so I'm less about, having like a structured. We're going to get this point, this point, and this point. I want to talk a little bit about Ed Wood, obviously. You know a hell of a lot more about the guy than I do. So I want to hear a little bit more about that. And then when we talked about this, we talked about you mentioning some of the movies that maybe some people don't really know a lot about.
Yeah, that's
we all know the basics. We all know Plan 9,
Right. So,
which I'm sure we'll hit on. But yeah, I don't have a lot of structure. I mean, if we kind of veer off on a tangent or whatever, I can always edit things together. I mean,
yeah, I figured.
You know what I do.
Yeah, I do. So, wow. Okay. All right.
Make sure my gear is recording here. No technical difficulties. Okay. And okay.
All right.
We are.
By the way, have you seen the Tumblr for this that I've made for this? The Ed Wood Wednesdays Tumblr?
I think so.
So just try edwoodwednesdays.tumblr.com.
It's popping up on my... Nope. Yes, I have. I remember when you talked about putting this together because all the kids are doing Tumblr.
I've joked I've almost gotten to the point where I want to just go door to door and just read these to people. Just, do you have a few minutes that I can talk to you about Edward D. Wood Jr.? Like, have you accepted Edward D. Wood Jr. into your life? Can I come in for a minute and maybe we could talk? It's like a Jehovah's Witness kind of thing, but with Ed. So I figured anything I can do to make these sort of like more accessible is good, and that's why I created this Tumblr. Because like I said, I never, basically every time I write one, you have to do the thing where you kind of make the rounds on social media, sort of begging people to go read it.
Yeah.
And I never, like, really random ones will, for some reason, do really well, and then ones that you expect to do well actually don't. So I figured this way, it's all on this one page. It's pretty. I try to make it with, like, pretty colors and stuff. Just anything possible. If I could just read these articles to people, I would. Well, that's the other thing, that I wish Ed Wood's name didn't also sound like W-O-U-L-D, because that has made so many sentences impossible. Like, what Ed Wood would do, Like, would Ed Wood write this movie, or what would Ed have done, or something? I have to go through articles sometimes and take those kind of sentences out because they would sound ridiculous if you said them out loud. So I wish his name was almost anything else. Also, do you know why it's Ed Wood Wednesdays rather than any other day of the week? Because of the W sound. Right. And Wednesdays is a super busy day for me. Wednesdays is like my busiest day of the week. So I wish his name had been alliterative with any other day of the week. So that's been the other challenge of this, was that Wednesdays is a really inconvenient day. I didn't even think about that in advance. So, but the Wood thing, it does get a lot of play in books and articles and documentaries with puns on the name.
Yeah, of course.
Like Dead Wood, and I can't even remember all of them, but Wood actually, gets a lot. There's a lot of Wood-based. I think in like 8 months of doing these, and the project has been going for 8 months. I don't think I've done too many Wood-based puns.
I haven't picked up on that at all, really. Yeah. So I mean, if you have, it's been so peripheral that.
So I've not been, chopping wood or firewood or log wood, or I've not done any of those wood puns. So That's one thing that I saw from documentaries and articles that I was like, oh, I'm definitely avoiding wood-based.
Yeah.
So another thing is, lately I've been trying to do more journalism around it, and that means like trying to contact people that are involved. How does that go for you when you try to contact people?
Well, I haven't done a lot of it with Monster Kid Radio. I think the only people outside of my friends that I've had on MKR have been Jackie Rainham Jones from Manos, and I'm friends with her on Facebook as well, so it was just a matter of reaching out to her and asking her if she'd do it. And then Dennis Vincent, that I just had on the show last week, he's also a mutual friend of a friend. Okay. So he's the one that introduced me to him, and I just reached out to him on Facebook as well. But I haven't had a lot of... Oh, I guess Roger Brown is probably the biggest stretch that I had when I had the guy who played Argo Man on the show. And,
right, I heard that. That was so cool.
Yeah, that was a thrill. I want to have him back on down the line, but that was set up for me through the film company that I do some work for now.
Oh, really? Dorado Films.
Yeah.
Heard about that.
Yeah, so they're friends with them. They're friends with Roger. They own the rights to Argo Man and all that, and they're the ones that put me in contact with them. And that was months of setting things up and making a schedule happen and all that. So, but yeah, I haven't had a lot of real world experience in terms of like reaching out to other people. I want to do more of that. What you've been hearing is kind of the preamble to what Joe Blevins and I talked about on a few episodes of Monster Kid Radio about a week or so ago. Back on episode 80 and 81, he and I broke down his Ed Wood Wednesday project over at his website, Dead to Rights, which you can get to at d2rights.blogspot.com. Well, before we started the show proper, we're just going to talk a little bit. It's the first time we'd actually communicated in a very long time. We were just kind of warming things up, getting the Skype machine going, making sure our vocal cords were ready to get into the goodness that is Ed Wood. And I thought it'd be interesting to share this raw recording, not overly edited, not overly produced, just this conversation between a couple of guys who happen to love monster movies, one who happens to really love Ed Wood movies. I thought it'd be a nice conversation to share with you on episode 83 of Monster Kid Radio, the podcast devoted to the classic and sometimes not so classic genre cinema of yesteryear. I am your host, Derek M. Cook. I want to welcome you to the show. Now, you can find everything that you need to know about what we do here at Monster Kid Radio over on our website, monsterkidradio.net. You can find a link to Joe's website, Dead to Rights, in the show notes over there at monsterkidradio.net. You can find links to the YouTube, the Live 365, the Facebook group, and you can also find our contact information, which is monsterkidradio@gmail.com, or our voicemail line, which is 503-479-5657. That's 503-479-5MKR. The other really big thing that I want to talk about, again, I've been mentioning for the past few episodes, we were nominated for a Rondo Award. Monster Kid Radio was nominated in the Best Multimedia Horror category. Head over to rondoaward.com to view the entire ballot, every category, every nominee, and for instructions on how to make your voice heard and get your vote cast in this year's Rondo Awards. Of course, we'd appreciate your support. I'd also appreciate your support for Christopher R. Mim for his movie The Giant Spider. He's up for Best Independent Film. We're working on getting Chris on the show in the very near future to talk about his upcoming movie, the Late Night Double Feature. Post-production is done. He's just now working on getting the premiere done, and, well, we'll see what happens next. If we get him on the show, we'll talk about what his future plans are, and we'll talk about some other things as well. And speaking of talking about other things, why don't we just get back to that raw conversation between Joe and I about Ed Wood right after this.
White Zombie, a new novelization of the classic horror movie from award-winning author Stephen D. Sullivan. Available now in print and all ebook formats. Find it on Amazon, Smashwords, Drive-Thru Fiction, and other quality outlets. Also available in a special edition, including the complete movie script. Grab White Zombie before it grabs you. Details at sdsullivan.com.
Hello, Christopher. What insanity are you up to today?
Oh, hey, Lydia. I'm downloading some movies.
What? People are always telling me that's illegal.
Not these. They're all public domain. Oh, look, rescue from Gilligan's Island.
Well, let me see what you're doing. Oh, you're at archive.org. Well, they have thousands of films, TV shows, commercials, radio shows, and books available.
Yeah, but there are so many. I wish there was a podcast or something that would discuss these things. Give us an idea of what's worth the time.
Christopher, there is. We do one.
Oh, that's right. We host Orphan Entertainment. Once a month, we pick something from archive.org and review and discuss it. That sure is nice of us.
Sure. Well, why don't you click over to orphan-entertainment.jonja.net and remind yourself a little more about the show.
Will do. So let's see. That's orphan-entertainment.jonja.net. Hey, can we review the Gilligan's Island movie sometime?
Mm-hmm. We'll see, Christopher. We'll see.
And then every person who's chronicling Ed Wood's career has to make it through all the Stephen Apostolov films from the 1970s in a row. He's the guy who made, in 1965, he was the one who made Orgy of the Dead.
Ah, yes.
And Orgy of the Dead, though, is a real crazy movie. It has kind of an Elvira-looking woman, and it has a graveyard, and it has a mummy, and it has all this crazy stuff happening in it. And so that movie is actually pretty fun, unless you try and sit through it all in one sitting, which, like I said, that was one thing that I said in my article about it, is that people make the mistake of actually trying to sit down and watch it in one sitting, which they shouldn't do. Because nothing happens in the movie at all, and it's located in this very specific one spot, basically. It's not even, they're not like fanning out and being in the whole cemetery. They're in this one little clearing in the cemetery, so it seems like about like 20 square feet where the whole movie takes place. Mm-hmm. Other than this car accident at the beginning, like almost all of it takes place in this very little narrow rectangle of activity. That's the other thing about Apostolov's films, like they tend to be like 90 minutes long around there, and like Ed Wood's prime stuff is like 19, like from the 50s is like 60 to 70 minutes long, and you don't get like an Apostolov film that's shorter than about 90 minutes. Like even though like a lot less happens in Orgy of the Dead, and it takes place in a lot fewer locations, it's like a good 20 minutes longer than something like Glen or Glenda or Bride of the Monster or Plan 9 from Outer Space. And Plan 9 from Outer Space is crazy. It goes on in all these different places. Mm-hmm. There's army stuff happening, and then there's stuff on an airplane, and there's sort of domestic stuff, and then stuff happening out in outer space, and it's cutting from here and here and here and here. And Orgy of the Dead, it's all in one location, so you're kind of stuck there for a really long time. But at least that movie has all that sort of horror movie trappings, whereas if you watch all the movies from 1972 to 1978, basically all the movies that Ed made were with Stephen Apostolov. So there's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's like 6 or 7 films in a row where, those movies are rough to get through. Like sitting through The Cocktail Hostesses and The Class Reunion. Those movies are not fun to watch. I would want people to actually read those articles because I use them, I hope, as a jumping off point for a lot of hopefully interesting points about what life was like in the 1970s. Mm-hmm. And with a thing like Dropout Wife from 1972, I even found there really was this woman, there was this whole phenomenon of dropout wives, wives that were leaving their husbands and families as part of the feminist movement in the 70s. And then I found this woman who was like on the cover of Life magazine, and she was on 60 Minutes, and she was this kind of very controversial figure in America for about a year, and she was called the Dropout Wife. So in this article about this really boring movie, Dropout Wife, which is, believe me, it's a chore to watch. Like you're just going to be struggling to stay awake through that one. But yeah, that there are interesting like side points to talk about. And I think in one, I talked for a while about how the Apostolov Ed Wood movies in the 1970s, they're a good catalog of all the worst hairstyles and clothing and decorating ideas from the 70s. Like, they're all in one movie. So, those movies are just oppressively ugly to look at. Just the worst rooms ever, and the worst hairstyles and the worst clothes. And there's a way to go back and do 70s stuff where it makes it look kind of funky and cool. But if you go back to the actual 70s, you see a lot of those awful, because those kind of ugly earth tones and kind of avocado colored carpeting and stuff. Yeah. And you're stuck in for 90 minutes watching this stuff. So, but anyway, do you want to talk about some of the famous ones?
Well, I think the famous ones are the Gateway. Obviously, and then we'll dive a little bit into some of these other. They don't have the significant Monster Kid Radio. The monster movie kind of connections, but I still think it's fascinating. And you nailed it right when you were just talking about how these later films, you're trapped in the worst of the 70s. And it's fascinating to me as somebody who loves looking at movies as these historical, kind of archaeological almost in a way kind of things, because you get to look and see what things were like during this time, especially for a non-studio picture, an independent film.
Oh, yeah.
It's just fascinating because you don't have Hollywood prettying it up. This is what it was. It was more real and more gritty and the avocado colors of everything,
That was the other thing that you'll find in Stephen Apostolov films in the 1970s. He would do some location shooting. And I even was in contact with the people he shot a couple of movies at a ski resort just because he liked skiing.
Okay.
Later, people have confirmed that this was the place to me, but there was a place in California actually called Mammoth Mountain where he filmed a couple of movies. But the sets are, and I've actually been in contact with the people at Mammoth Mountain, and they had no idea that they had no idea that Ed Wood had a couple of movies made there. The problem, unfortunately, though, was that this was a tourist resort, and it was kind of corporate owned. And I think they'd been through a couple of different corporate owners, and anybody who would have been attached to the previous regime was gone at Mammoth Mountain. So, but the place still looks pretty much the same. But the problem is with the Apostolov films, he filmed all the interiors on these sets. So you see these brick walls, these sort of cinder block walls, sort of gray brick walls, and these really bad couches pushed up against the brick walls. And you'd see these same brick walls in movie after movie after movie, and they just rearrange the furniture from one room to another to make you think they've gone from one room to another, but they've not done that at all. They've just rearranged the furniture against this really oppressive, prison-y looking gray wall. And so if you watch all of his movies week after week, back to back, you end up looking at these gray cinder block walls over and over and over again. So, but the one thing that I wanted to bring up to your Monster Kid Radio listeners is that there are a few movies in the obscurity category that do have monsters in them, including a monster who is just called The Monster in 1 Million AC/DC. There's a great monster in 1 Million AC/DC from 1969. There's another really cool monster in Venus Flytrap from 1970. And let's see, what else? Let's see if there's the Astounding She-Monster from 1957.
See, I didn't realize he was attached to that in any way when you mentioned that on your blog. Like, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, the extent to which he was is disputed, and that's what happens after, I think with week 28, Hot Ice was the last sort of canonical, official thing that Ed Wood was involved in that was on my list, where it actually says Edward D. Wood, I guess, in the credits.
Right.
And he was an assistant director on that. Starting with week 30, and I'd say it's done 5 in a row like that. These are sort of the apocryphal films where his involvement in it is kind of disputed, or where the people that have different accounts of how involved he was or was not. Because like last week's movie was called Married Too Young from 1962, and now any release that Married Too Young gets, it says it's practically like Ed Wood's Married Too Young.
Right.
But I made sure to put in there that the credited screenwriter's daughter, says that like her dad was the only one who wrote the movie, and that Ed Wood had no involvement in it. So maybe it's important to her that Married Too Young is correctly attributed to her dad and not to Ed Wood. But if the movie is ever going to be seen by anybody ever again, it's because of Ed's name and not any other factor. Because otherwise no one is ever going to sit through Married Too Young ever again.
Is it pretty rough?
No, it's not that bad. It's not bad as these things go. It's not the cocktail hostesses or the snow bunnies. It's called Married Too Young, but the hero of the movie is 30 years old and he's playing a high schooler. So he's Harold Lloyd Jr., the son of Harold Lloyd, the comedian. And he's okay. I said I try to like make the movies as vivid to people as I can. And I said that he reminded, because it was true, he reminds me of like Peyton Manning, but if you took away Peyton Manning's kind of sense of humor, you'd get Harold Lloyd Jr. And it's true. He's like, if you've ever seen like Peyton Manning do TV commercials and stuff, he's a lot like Peyton Manning in behavior, except no humor to him at all. Yeah, if anybody ever watches Married Too Young, it's not going to be like Harold Lloyd fans who want to see like, well, what was his son doing, in 1962. Nobody's going to want to see that. But so anybody who distributes Married Too Young, they always try and play up Ed's involvement in it.
Sure.
But the movies that if I would want to steer anybody towards the obscure films in the catalog, Venus Flytrap, which is now very, very widely available, public domain-wise, as The Revenge of Dr. X. It's public domain, so it's in a lot of the Mill Creek sets. It's week 20 here on the list of the movies that I did. And, I would want people to check out definitely 1 Million AC/DC, which is a caveman movie. Normally, I don't like caveman movies at all. On 1951 Downplace, you did a caveman film, didn't you?
Yeah, we did Raquel Welch. Was it 1 Million Years BC? 1
Million Years BC. This was like 1 Million AC/DC was meant as a parody of 1 Million Years BC.
I recently just put that in, actually, because I have that on DVD with the Mighty Gorga from Something Weird.
Yes.
And I've got a soft spot for the Mighty Gorga, as awful as it is. And I've never sat down to watch the 1 Million Year AC/DC, but I thought, I got the DVD, I'll give it a look, and boy, it looks rough.
It's okay. Here's the thing that I would say to people about 1 Million AC/DC is especially the first 10 minutes are really rough sledding, because this is the most unfortunate aspect of some of Ed's movies from the 60s and 70s is there's like a really uncomfortable rapey kind of aspect to a lot of the films where like this is a caveman movie, so part of the caveman, the part of like the appeal of them is like bonk the woman over the head and like drag her over your shoulder, kind of, where she doesn't have any say in what's happening. And that's like the first 10 minutes of this movie, and they're gross. They're really unpleasant because if you go to the Tumblr site, or if you go to the list of the articles, you can see the one for week 17. Like, you see this guy who looks like Borat's sidekick from Borat. This actor, I forgot. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name, but he's also in The Creeping Terror. If you've ever seen that one, that's the one where the big slow-moving monster. This is that guy, but you're seeing him like just wearing like a loincloth, which he's an unpleasant-looking fellow, and you're just seeing him in a loincloth. But they call in the movie a virgin sacrifice, which is so awful. But I would say stick with the movie for like 10 minutes, because then like fun, goofy stuff starts happening in the movie. And I think a lot of it's done as intentional comedy. You get this plastic dinosaur that looks a lot like a Rex from the Toy Story movies. And they do a lot of this forced perspective stuff where they hold a little plastic dinosaur right up close to the camera so that he looks huge and then the characters in the background are supposed to look small.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrific. So there's a guy in a gorilla suit, which I love. I always love movies where there's guys in gorilla suits. Oh, what am I even talking about? Like if people are going to be like pushed towards more obscure movies in the catalog, definitely for Monster Kid Radio fans, definitely go to The Bride and the Beast from 1958. I don't know, have you seen that particular film?
I have. It's been a while, but I have seen that one. I do have that one here.
That's the love story between this woman who's just married and she falls in love with a gorilla.
With a gorilla. There's this whole hypnosis thing. And
yeah, and that one features Lance Fuller, who is in This Island Earth, and he's in, I think it's called The She-Monster. It's the other, so that was the one where I said that the movie was crying out for John Agar. That movie, The Bride and the Beast, the star of the movie should definitely be John Agar. Ed Wood knew John Agar, and they socialized a bit, but somehow it never happened that they got around to making a movie together, unfortunately, which would have been great, an Ed Wood, John Agar movie. But he tried to get Agar in a film. He tried to get Boris Karloff in a movie, too, but it never happened. But this movie, Lance Fuller plays this guy who's kind of like a great white hunter, and he takes his wife with him on a safari, and I think they had some footage of a tiger that they wanted to use, so there's like this whole side plot about tiger hunting, and this plot would be perfect for John Agar. I can just imagine exactly how he'd play the part. And Lance Fuller is not as charismatic and doesn't have sort of the, I don't know, John Agar has this kind of thing where he kind of struts through his movies. He's very confident.
Yeah.
There's almost this kind of haughty, kind of arrogant kind of aspect to some of his characters. And Lance Fuller isn't that at all. Lance Fuller is, I guess, trying his best here, but he just doesn't have the personality for it like John would have for this. So that's still an entertaining film, though. The Bride and the Beast. And the DVD for it is actually excellent. So that's one where the DVD is really, really good. Like, the picture quality is beautiful. It's a widescreen transfer. There's special features on it. People should definitely check out The Bride and the Beast on DVD. That's a fun one. Yeah, on something like Venus Flytrap, which turned out it was not... it was made by American servicemen. And there's been a lot of confusion as to who actually made the movie and why. But it turns out it was made by people in the American military who were stationed over in Japan. And the guy that I think directed it was the guy who was in charge of getting entertainment at military bases in Japan for Americans. The Americans stationed over there needed to be entertained, and so this guy was like the head of getting entertainment, head of the entertainment department over there, and so he got the idea in his mind that he was going to make a movie, and he somehow got connected with this script called The Venus Flytrap, and it's now known as The Revenge of Dr. X, probably through this kind of mistaken misattribution of the film in the 1980s. It was picked up by this video company called, I think, Regal Video. I've read a little bit about them, that they might have been more into making furniture than movies. And they bought up the rights to Venus Flytrap. They it might have actually been missing a title sequence when they got it, so they just took the credits from another movie and just added it on to the beginning of this one so that it would have credits. But none of the people in the credits are in the movie at all. But what people tend to notice about Revenge of Dr. X is there's no revenge and there's no Dr. X. So there's like the two things that are in the title are not in the movie at all. There's nobody getting revenge and there's nobody named Dr. X. So Venus Flytrap is a much more accurate title. That's a film where you can get it on a lot of Mill Creek box sets. And it's also just a public domain film. The print that you can get of it is pretty rough. But hey, you know, I think I think people can survive it. It's not that bad. That's one of the plagues of doing this project is that a lot of times the best DVD version you can get is something that was made from videotape, where the movie was, you know, in the 80s was transferred to videotape, and then the DVD version is just a transfer from a VHS. So rather than film to DVD, you're getting film to video to DVD.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Something sounds like something happened here. I don't know if you can hear me all right. It just happened. It's like, oh crap, what just happened to Skype? Okay.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me now.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, I mean, I've been recording pretty much for a while now, and I might take some of what we just talked about out and use it as, you know, a proper episode. But let me get some actual, like, kind of back and forth and all that, and do like a little intro bit and all. But I'm sitting here taking notes.
That's good. All right, here we go.
Again, big thanks to Joe for joining us on Monster Kid Radio to talk about Ed Wood. You really need to be reading his website, Dead to Rights, not just for the Ed Wood Wednesday project, but for everything that he puts up there. The guy is a talented writer. You're always going to learn something while smiling. It's a great blog, highly, highly recommended. Comes with the Monster Kid Radio stamp of approval. What's coming up next on Monster Kid Radio? Not 100% sure yet. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, I suffered a loss recently. My grandmother passed away at the age of 95. And last weekend, I was down in Arizona for the funeral. Now, I'm back up here in Oregon at the Monster Kid Radio studios to put this show together, and I'm going to try real hard to put out episode 84 here in a couple of days. I don't want to break that Tuesday-Thursday rhythm, but if I'm not able to get something put together, I'm going to ask you to please bear with me. Keep your podcast dials tuned to monsterkidradio.net or Monster Kid Radio in the iTunes Store or Stitcher, because there will be another episode next week. I know that we've got to share with you what happened at the Monster Kid Radio crash when we crashed the Hollywood Theater for Sandhill and Blue Demon versus the Monsters. That will be coming up maybe later this week, maybe next week. You're just going to have to keep listening to find out. I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank everybody for their support. I want to thank everybody for the reviews people have given us in the iTunes Store and all the kind words, all the support about the Rondo Awards, all the support about the stuff going on in my life personally. It's been great. You guys and gals are great. Monster Kid Radio is great because of you. Monster Kid Radio is a registered service mark of Monster Kid Radio LLC. All original content of Monster Kid Radio by Monster Kid Radio LLC is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 3.0 Unported license. Talk to everybody here soon.